All right, and this is Gilbert. It's all about the media podcast. As I mentioned last season, Jesus and I we were planning on something pretty cool for this season, and here it is. We got our good friend Mr. Joshua Gonzalez with us. Josh and I knew each other almost 6 years since we first met.
Yeah, it was
Like
back in fall semester of 6 years ago at 2018 at Northwest Vista College. I met you at the acting class.
Yeah, since then I think we've connected. I think what connected both Josh and I, and Jesus, you're gonna love this. He's a good fan of Metal Gear, which is something Jesus and I we talked about Metal Gear on the podcast during my first season. That's actually where I let Jesus host for the first time because he had more knowledge of the subject matter than I did. But anyway, another thing I forgot to mention, guys, from my first episode of when I was talking about James Earl Jones and Maggie Smith, but what I forgot to mention is now my podcast is officially under a studio. And if you guys are wondering what studio that is, it is actually my own personal studio I created called Tough Love Pictures. Right now, I'm still working on some kinks and stuff. I'm still trying to get a website going, and the website will actually have all the podcast episodes. So now, instead of being it very, very independent up in the air, officially now I own the podcast. So it's mine. Tough Love Pictures, my own company, has the podcast. So there you go. So this series, because it's the Halloween season that is now upon us, I think it was my responsibility to now talk about horror episodes for this Halloween season. Hopefully it shouldn't take me too long to actually get all these episodes out. But what I decided to do was I contacted my good friends Jesus and Josh here, and I said, hey, I have an idea. What if we do like separate episodes and we talk about horror movies, but we talk about horror movies within a subgenre? So basically, here's what I mean. Like, pretend if one of us had Supernatural. Each of us are gonna watch a couple of horror movies that would fit that genre, and we pick out like what movie we like within that little subgenre. And it could be very tricky too, because like Supernatural could be anything. Like, most common one could be The Exorcist, obviously. But A Nightmare on Elm Street could actually be part of Supernatural, because Freddy Krueger is something that's beyond natural, beyond reality. Or like go religious horror. The Exorcist belongs to religious horror. So you kind of see where things are going with. My inspiration for this idea was, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a YouTuber named Cody Leach, but he's a real unique YouTuber. He reviews movies and stuff, but he was like labeling down like his least two favorite horror subgenres. So that's where my idea of this little series comes on. And hopefully maybe we can try to do this weekly and within this month. And if not, I got other ideas, but hopefully fingers crossed. But how this is going to work, we're going to talk about a subgenre that we picked, and then we're going to talk about movies that we've seen in the past or might have seen this week, and we're just going to talk about it per segment. So obviously, so I'm going to go first just so like Jesus and Josh can get the idea of how we're going to do this. So all right. The subgenre that I picked for this episode is folklore horror or folk horror. So if you guys are asking what is that, folklore horror is basically like horror movies within like that involves around a certain mythos or mythology. So for instance, or for example, Antlers that came out a couple of years ago. A lot of it was about the Wendigo. That was Native American culture. Or The Ritual that came out another couple of years ago that was about like mythology, Norse mythology. So the movie that I'm going to talk about is a movie called The Witch. Directed by Robert Eggers. This was his directorial debut, and I was debating, and I talked to Seuss about this earlier this morning, before or last night, I don't remember. But I asked him, "You think The Lighthouse would also be considered folk horror?" And because if you've ever seen The Lighthouse, there's a lot of like homages to like Greek mythology, maybe even Norse mythology and stuff like that. But it could fall into that genre, or like the upcoming Nosferatu, which I'm super excited to watch. But yeah, that's what the movie I'm going to be talking about, which is The Witch. So have you guys ever actually seen The Witch? Before we continue.
I haven't really seen it. Here's the funny thing. I seen like clips of it, or like I don't know if on YouTube, instead of watching like the whole movie, you watch like the horror movie recaps. So it shows like throughout the whole movie, but like there's clips of it like piece by piece by piece. And because I have a lot of times I didn't really watch like the full movie, or I barely had a chance. But I have heard it was good. It is from A24 and Blumhouse Productions. So I always know that when it's a movie from that production, it's always gonna be good.
Yeah, this was as I said, this was Robert Eggers' directorial debut, and it actually was the first film. I think the first film was actress Anya Taylor-Joy, which I think we're all familiar with at this point. She's pretty much the new give me a second. She's the new rising star Anya, and yeah, this is I think this was her acting debut, or at least one of her earliest ones. But for like I won't even say amateur, but for like a first timer, she actually did really good. But did you watch the Witch before? I forgot to ask you.
I remember vaguely a little bit. I saw it one time. I remember it was like when it was streaming, Netflix. But I gotta say, I mean, like just first for the first time viewing, it's a really great film. It kind of like hammers down like a lot of traditions from like Europe and other cultures that like we rarely get to see. But yeah, I think for what it is, I mean, Eggers they really like. His first time directing debut and all the actors his first timers. I mean, they really hit it.
Yeah. What I love about in case I forgot to give the little bit synopsis of this film. The synopsis is basically it takes place within the 1600s. I would say like 30 years before the Salem witch trials, which is, I believe, in the same area. And a Puritan family exiled from their own community, their own Puritan village, settles on this new land. But now this land has a lot of supernatural things that are occurring to them. This family is now it's not really like they're dealing with the supernatural per se. What I like about this movie is that it deals with more of faith, because Puritans are like not the early Christians, but the early American Christians. And as I said, like, I'm a man of faith, and Josh and Jesus, they're men of faith. So it's like when it comes to faith and Christianity, sometimes it could spark our interest. And what I like about it is that, like, it doesn't just deal with like what is the witch, like where's the witch or who is the witch. It's more like dealing with your own personal demons and your own like pride. And it's weird to see like a lot of like Christian themes coming from this kind of this kind of movie, because like like a lot of Christians are, when it comes to the word like wicked or witch or like black magic, they're like, oh, stay away from it. And I get it, because it's not something. Obviously, I don't want to deal with like witchcraft and black magic, because like I don't want to tell my mom that I'm studying brujeria. Like, no, okay, but it is a creepy thing, but it's also like why I like this movie and why it does fall under the folklore. It's because obviously, like, witch, a witch can do. I feel like what this movie does is kind of creates what we call the domino effect. When one knocks, when we knock one domino down, everything happens. So because how this movie starts off was basically like how any folklore that involves a witch. Because in most folklores, like the Baba Yaga and Slavic folklore, I believe, witches are known to consume children. Or what was it, Hansel and Gretel's, which wanted to consume Hansel. So that's kind of like what happened. Even though, like, to the family, they don't know what really. So spoiler alert, and everyone. If you haven't seen this movie, spoiler alert. But how it starts off pretty much is basically like the witch takes the youngest family member, a child, a baby, and murders it. But the family doesn't know. And once that happens, then the family just falls apart. I think like that's pretty interesting for me to see. Like, the antagonist doesn't need to attack a whole entire family. She or it doesn't need to pick it off one by one. She just needs to take what was the most innocent of them all and watch the family crumble for itself. Which I don't know. You could think it like Avengers, Baron, I think that's what his name is. Zemo, that's who I was thinking of. Remember, like in Civil War, all he had to do was just think of something for the Avengers to just destroy themselves. And the Avengers were on hold for like two or 3 years. Because this is the first time I've ever seen like it's called The Witch, but you rarely see the witch. It's like Jaws, where like there's a shark, but you don't see the shark. But what I
Or
really
like the Blair Witch Project when you don't see him.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, obviously, because of with Blair Witch, it's different because of like production restraints and stuff like that, budget restraints. But it still has its hold up. The other thing that I like about The Witch is that it's not based off a book or a play. It's all in the mind of Robert Eggers, and he created the script. And the script, how they talk is literally how people would talk back in the 1600s. You know what I mean? Like Shakespearean or dang, what's another person that was alive during? It's basically like how they talked back then. You know, they're not talking how we talk now. They talk like how they talked back then. And
It,
what?
oh,
No,
sorry, my microphone was going off.
no, you're fine. What I was just gonna ask is like because his sister and I went to high school together, and Josh, I don't know if you ever studied like you know, like old English literature, like Shakespeare and stuff like that. But I remember like the man, what's the big A on the chest?
Oh, the Scarlet Letter.
The Scarlet Letter. I mean, I don't
Yeah, the Scarlet Letter.
because y'all remember like reading the Scarlet Letter, and then so Josh, here's the story. Sis and I again, him and I went to high school together. And as for everyone else who's listening, our old English teacher, she would have us read a passage of the Scarlet Letter or like any Shakespearean play, and then she would ask us what this means, and I'm just there like I don't know because we speak now, they speak however they spoke back then. It's tough to, in a word, translate what they said back in the 1600s. But for Robert Eggers to like know what they're gonna say, that's interesting. Like he said, he studied like how people spoke in the 1600s. Like he took his time reading, you know, old literature and was like, so this is how they're gonna talk and stuff. I can't do that. I don't have the patience for that. I just like tapping random stuff and just thinking how they're gonna speak. The script is already good enough, and it actually won what was called Best First Screenplay at the Independent Spirit Awards. And to the horror aspect of this, there was a lot, especially when it deals with like children and stuff. Like there's a scene where like this kid, he's like literally dying, but he's making his declaration to God. But like the way it's framed and the way like the camera moves, it creeps me the heck out to this day. But he basically like he makes his declaration for God, and then he dies. And then I'm just thinking like, what's going on? Because I saw this movie when the pandemic started and we were all in lockdown. So like there was just a lot of, you know, there's a lot of things you could watch on Netflix and stuff. A24 had a big old bunch of releases. So there was this movie, and I think also Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler, which is a really good movie, by the way. I'm just going to ask y'all a question. Did witches ever scare y'all, like, in general? Like, when y'all ever watched a movie?
Like, well, I mean, it depends. Like, if there were some witches, like, I'll tell you something about my first horror movie experience. Has anyone seen like the original like 1999 Sleepy Hollow, the one with Johnny Depp?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know that one scene like where he like goes into like the house and you don't see the witch, and like she's all covered up and he's with a boy, and then she tells him, hey boy, can you go outside? And then it actually reveals himself at that part when she was like making like a dish, but she got the head of a bat and just like this split open just right there. I know it's like a practical effect, but when I first saw it, I'm like, okay, what the heck's going on? I'm like, and then I met like and then like if you look at like real like people who study like Wiccan and witchcraft, like you understand that's totally false, like from what horror movies think. But I think that the way we see things like in horror movies is more amplified, and how it's kind of like unrealistic sometimes. But you understand there was a lot of stuff that go behind, like even black magic, even people who do practice it, so to say, they still feel like they have like my pastor was telling me that he went to a house and they found out that the previous owner were like people who say black magic or witchcraft, and before they bought it, it looked fine, but when they bought it, they all there's all like these weird episodes in the house, so they ended up blessing the house, and that was it, and everything went back normal. But to answer your question again, like I never really thought of it that way, because I seen other movies where they portrayed it, but it was not as scary as the first one I saw. So I think it's all dependent on like what type of film it is and how actual graphic it has to be, because there's a certain level of like severity when it comes to the horror genre and certain characters that they display.
Yeah, but I think what I appreciate about this is that like he brought like the genre of, well, I wouldn't say the genre of witch, but like the idea of like witchcraft and stuff like that, because obviously like Blair Witch was an early one that people can remember. Another famous one I think was also The Craft. That came out, I don't know, I think it came out when I was born, like 96. That just feels weird to me right now, because that means it's 28 years, and yes, guys, I'm 28, I'm that old, but in a core like actual like horror aspect of it, we don't get too much. I'm just gonna say like I said, we don't get too much of the witch, because it's more of an idea of like who is the witch within the movie. because there could be one witch, but then there could also be multiple witches, which actually at the end you see a coven of witches in our protagonist, Anya Taylor-Joy. I almost forgot her name. Like she, yeah, it doesn't end well for anybody because this is where like the religious person in me kind of like feels bum about it too, where like she declares her love for Satan and agrees to become a witch. She leaves like her Puritan life behind. So in all honesty, I can also take that as a spiritual like growth. It's weird to say. It's more like you can abandon God and then go to Wiccan or like evil. Because like when you grow up like forced into a religion, sometimes people like to rebel against God and like to go to things like their own way to evil, which I mean they don't think they're evil. You know what I mean? It's more like you're leaving something that doesn't make you feel comfortable to something that does make you comfortable, but the outcome is never good. It's like drugs almost. Like once you try it for the first time, you think it feels good, but it has its repercussions down the road. But I mean, The Witch, one of my favorite Robert Eggers movies. It's still number one for me. It's what I love about Robert Eggers is his genre is folk films. So like as we mentioned, The Lighthouse is also considered a folk horror film. Nosferatu is going to be considered a folk horror film. Actually, this morning I looked it up. If it was considered folk horror, it's considered folk horror, but not a folklore film, which I don't get. But either way, I can't wait for that one. The Norseman, even though that's not a horror film, it still has a lot of folk. Like Norse folklore. It's hard to say that in one word, but that's it for my segment of the podcast, and we're gonna take a quick break right now, so don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. Now I'm gonna let Jesus take the mic on this one. He's gonna talk about another horror film within the folklore genre. Some people might, if you ever tune in for the next episode, you guys might feel a little bit different within the movie he's talking about. And well, I don't want to say too much, but Jesus, go ahead and start taking it away.
All right, howdy everybody. So at least the way how Gilbert was mentioning it, introducing it to, it does have a little bit of what our next podcast's theme is going to be about. But I mean, I just really want to focus on more of the folk aspect of it. This is a Shudder original that came out, I think, about 2-3 years ago. So around like 2020, or just at least towards the end of the pandemic lockdown. And I know some people will get confused by it just because it has the exact similar name to it. But this is La Llorona. This came out at least on streaming originally, and then it had a couple of independent circuits for film, but ultimately like home video release. Anyway, this version is not the same as The Curse of La Llorona, which came out like around the same time. But that's more of the Conjuring universe, so that is its own thing, but it's not the same exact film. So this one in particular focuses on the Guatemalan legend. As you know, La Llorona is probably the most infamous folk legend in Latin America. Almost every single country in that region pretty much is affiliated with that character. So, I mean, just for those who are not familiar with it, it's pretty much the story of believe it or not, every country has their own different interpretation of how she became La Llorona, but the same story but there is still one plot that's significant, is exactly the same in every part of the region, and that's basically that she felt jealous of, apparently, like she was made assumptions that her husband was cheating on her. So in retaliation, she drowned her kids in the lake or pond. So as a result of that, she pretty much she regrets her decision later on, and all she does now throughout the rest of her life, as she is, if I can put it lightly, eternally damned to go and search for her kids. And that's why she's La Llorona, because she weeps for them. She constantly goes out in the middle of the night or the day or whatever part of the region that you're associated with or you're familiar with. She is pretty much calling out to her kids, of the same kids that she herself had killed. So again, every iteration has other plot points that are very different, but that just makes them unique. and that's why this legend, I believe, is constantly referred to and always used to scare our kids or the little kids to make sure they go to sleep and respect their parents. But yeah, the movie in this particular case is in Guatemala. So basically, it's about this. To be very brief, it's about this former military man who rose to power during the Guatemalan Civil War, and afterwards, he's essentially being like he's having this big case. It centers around him having being tried for a lot of crimes that he committed during that period of time. So he's already got family at this point. He's got grandkids, and they all live in this one house. It's again because of his power and what he had done. They live pretty rich, I guess. They live the luxurious life. And the thing is that La Llorona in this film is more of a tormentor, more out to get him for basically killing as many innocent people during that time in the Civil War. So she not only serves as simply like a horror figure to her to be like the sole tormentor in his life, at least towards the last couple of during this period of time for him, tribulation. But it's also like she serves as a figure, like an icon, to represent all of those people that had passed away, like the innocent people that didn't have to go through this. So, like I said, it's more it relies heavily more on that whole political kind of aspect. But to go back to the folklore, I like the beginning of the film. The beginning of the film is really just one of the aids because remember he's a rich guy, must have a luxurious life. He has a lot of butlers and waitresses and whatnot. Anyway, at the beginning, there's a prayer, and that's how the film starts. It's a prayer that is almost like you probably had your grandma talk about it. If you come from this Hispanic and Latino background, a lot of times we had grandmas growing up and grandpas and whatnot that would pray constantly on end. But it's her trying to just pray for forgiveness, but also protection because she, along with a couple of others, understand that him and his family are going to be affected greatly, not just from the trial that he's going to go through, but from something else. And so throughout the film, he is noticing these changes. He's noticing a beautiful lady just staring at him. And sometimes there's flooding happening in his home, like his bathtub, like his grandkid almost gets drowned at some point. And like he wakes up in the middle of the night thinking that his entire lower, like his bedroom up to the bathroom is flooded. So once he comes to, remember, just keep in mind, he's a former military guy. So he's also senile. So he thinks there's somebody in that room that like a person that's out to attack them. So he gets a gun, and like several times this is happening. As he gets up and he's getting like very crazy, like he thinks he sees something, so he's about to shoot, and then next thing you know, his daughter stops it immediately because it's no one. It's like he almost shot one of his butlers at one point during the night because he had confused her for La Llorona and stuff like that. So the idea is, as we grow up knowing about who she is and what this legend entails, she represents so many things to many people living in the Latino culture. So it could be from simply just being somebody that is wishing to be with her kids. She could just be a representation of how things are going out in the world, at least currently in the culture. She could just be a representation of just being like the Grim Reaper, like she's out to come and take you when it's your time. So again, I could probably talk more about this politically later throughout the next episode, but I thought maybe just because why couldn't we include her in this podcast episode of folk horror? Because I mean, she is pretty much the most well-known Latino horror figure. So yeah, I think that's as much as I'm gonna go on to with that topic.
Yeah, I never grew up with the story. I mean, because I grew up traditionally Mexican, because both my parents and my grandparents were born in the U.S. Because that makes me fourth generation. So, but my mom definitely, she told me like her grandmother would tell her stories. Like like I said, I didn't grow up with that, but my mom certainly did. And like my great grandmother would have her, my uncles. My mom was an only daughter, and my mom mainly had just brothers. But it'll be her, my uncles, and all their cousins. They would all be taken care of by my great grandmother when my grandma and my tios and my tias had to work and stuff. And what my great grandmother would do, and I think I mentioned this. For those that don't know, I used to do a little bit of a comedy back in the COVID times because I felt like we all needed laughter during that time. But my great grandmother would tell them like all these stories of like La Llorona, and she would like step away for a bit while they're all like crowded in a circle. And then like 10 minutes later, she would get like a white blanket or something, just run and just like scare them all to heck. But and like I said, I didn't grow up with that, but I was always thought about El Cocuy. That's the one I was told about. I don't know what you grew up with, Josh.
I kind of grew up mostly on El Cucuy. Like I didn't know what it was until I got when I was about like 10. And I had to say this, even though I grew up Hispanic, I was never really much into it until I actually met friends. Like unless I was in the community of like when I was back at this church called El Sendero. It was an Assemblies of God church, so there will always be a bunch of Mexicans there, and they will tell me about the stories about that. And since I'm Hispanic, I didn't really understand it until I actually looked it up when I got older. So it's basically like it's like if Slender Man was Mexican, so it's like that's how I like to put it down. But that's all I had to give on that endpoint. But I heard stories about like La Llorona, but I never really like consider it as that because Uncle Blue was more based on like the traditional population of Hispanics and Mexicans rather than the other mythical being that we're talking about.
Yeah. So I used to watch a show. Or I actually kind of still do. Depends. There's a show that came out years ago. Actually, 20 years ago, and it had 15 seasons. It's a show called Supernatural, and the first episode, not really about La Llorona, but about the woman in white, which is kind of like what La Llorona is. But it's pretty much the same story. A woman jealous of her husband because her husband cheated on her. That's like kind of one of the stories. And then like she drowns her kids in retaliation, and now she's a ghost because of that. I mean, just for the fun and the heck of it, we could just, for the rest of the second, we could trash about the 2019 version. But bro, I mean, I remember Seuss was telling me about like how it all ends and stuff like that. I mean, I remember seeing it on, I think it was Max, or back when it was still called HBO Max, when they had the HBO title in it. And then I was just watching a whole bunch of Conjuring movies, and then I see The Curse of La Llorona. And boy, I'm just glad I didn't spend money at the theaters to watch that. But yeah, I knew how bad that movie was. Especially like I think how that movie ends was basically they stab her in the heart with a cross.
If I could interject, okay. So the last thing I heard from what you were mentioning was you're so glad that you never spent money on this, and quite rightfully so. You should be glad. I will say though, my experience was something I will never forget. It's so funny. Imagine yourself in a theater room that predominantly receives a lot of Hispanic / Latino people on a daily basis, and you buy yourself a ticket to enjoy with your family, and everybody there already knows the story. So we expect we're coming in with like high expectations, and we had a fun time. Everybody had laughed at a certain point. We laughed at certain scenes, and like it's almost like everybody already knew what was happening, and we like if we knew each other almost, because when you mentioned as soon as she gets stabbed by that crucifix, somebody in the background, like the audience member, goes and says in Spanish, like in terms of translating it, it's the same way of saying you got what's coming to you, you be. So she literally did say the B word. And once that happened, we all died. We were all just dying of laughter. It was that hilarious to the point we didn't even care what was going to happen in the end. We just sat there all laughing, knowing that it was that bad.
Yeah. No,
Well,
A whole audience that is
that was
familiar with that story, and it's
that
just
that
it was so dumb.
that is so funny. Like I remember the last time I saw. Well, this isn't folklore, but has anyone seen the new movie? It came out in 2023 in January. I actually saw it during the first opening night. I saw that new movie Megan, about the robot doll. So I saw that, and there were some scenes where like I'm just like busting out laughing because it was just so damn funny. And it's like supposed to be a summer horror movie, but a lot of times it had just moments of just pure laughter, and it was kind of funny seeing that in an opening movie.
Yeah. No, because I remember you were telling me stuff about this movie, and when I saw it for the first time, like when they were like checking the house, they were using an egg, and obviously like in Hispanic culture, there's that thing about what's the egg? Just I still don't get it for some reason. It's like you get an egg, you rub it around your body, or like I remember my grandma doing this
Me
to
neither.
me.
It's also curanderos.
Yeah, like well, I think my tia's a curandera. Yeah, there's this egg, and then like there's something with the yolk. It tells you if it's good juju or bad. But yeah, no, that's always like that's a funny thing is that they went with the egg, and then they went with the cross, and then the only good thing that just brought me just to joy with this film was damn, I forgot the actor's name in that movie, but he played Tuco in Breaking Bad. But his character is a curandero, but it's like he has ethics that obviously, I mean, the priest in the movie kind of explains like, yeah, his ethics are not really good. Like he literally uses the kids as bait to trap La Llorona. Now that's as much as I could think of, but I think he's the reason why I kind of wanted why I watched it again because of his character. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got about that. But
I gotta say, he gives all curanderos a bad vibe.
all right, so thank you for Zeus for sharing your movie. I've never seen the Guatemalan version, but mostly because I don't have Shudder. But I think Tubi has it, so I'm probably gonna see if I can watch it from there. Once we come back, Josh is gonna share his movie under the genre, and yeah, it'll be our last segment for today. All right, welcome back. This is our last segment for today's episode, and Josh, take the wheel. I had to put that in there.
Yeah. For this topic of discussion, I picked up this movie. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. I'm trying to find. Wait. Okay, so for this movie, I picked out. I saw a movie. I saw a movie recap of the. All right, so for this week, I actually saw a recap of the movie Blood Red Sky from 2021. And this film it has to do with the main characters and supernatural creatures of vampires. And the synopsis of the film, it consists about a German woman, or I do know it's either German or Dutch, but she's traveling with her son to America, but unbeknownst to everyone else, she's actually like contracted this virus that makes her like a vampire. But around daytime, she has to wear like special contacts, different like teeth to make sure it's not pointed. And they're on the plane, but instead of going on the plane as normal, it turns out that there's some men who want to hijack the plane. And she intervenes, but she like it was stupid how she intervened. She tries to I get them, and she just like dies like during the first part. And I'm not gonna reveal the whole thing. And it turns out that when she like becomes one of the first victims, she transfers herself to her beast self. And it turns out like throughout the film, it shows her the origin how she became who she is. Instead of the creature being the villain of the story, she's actually somewhat of the anti-hero of the movie because she tries to save as much as people as she can. And that's kind of it because it was kind of weird, but also at the same time it had a lot of good morals because the mom is trying to do everything in her life to protect her son. So it showed like how much a mother will go just to protect her son. And so I won't reveal like the ending or no spoilers, but it was just kind of weird how the location itself, like Germany or in like Eastern Europe, and you know how a lot of people have had like mythological creatures over there, and there's so many at the top of I can list off my head. But for this one, it kind of reminded me of the creatures you saw like in Resident Evil 8, like Village. So that was kind of like a mixture of that. Also, it had like the settings like the movie Snakes on a Plane, like for some reason. But that's why I like to give my input, and that's how I want to share my film for this week on your podcast, Gilbert.
All right. I've actually never heard of Blood Red Guy, so I'm actually intrigued. I know like plane. I guess plane would be a genre. I can't really tell, but like where the setting is a plane, it's very There's a lot of risk because like you're on a plane that's like in the sky that's going thousands of miles an hour, and you don't really have space to run because you're in that area with a lot of other people. So like, Snake on a Plane, Red Eye, which was one of Wes Craven's later films. What else? There's a movie that came out with Liam Neeson. I think it's called Unstoppable or something like that, where like he's the air marshal and he has to take care of he has to take care of like a threat that's on a plane. But he has to do it in secret, or else more people will die on the plane. But how did you hear about that? I've never heard of that movie.
I heard about it since I'm always on YouTube. But I'm limiting my screen usage. But this was like during the summer months where I don't have no class, I can be on my phone all the time. And you know how there's always like these channels where it gives like this narrator says, "Hi, my name is so called films," and they will do a recap of this film. So there's different genres. Like there's a drama genre, action movie, and there's some that mix up with horror and action. So I saw this one; it was under the action section. So I wanted to put that in, but I looked up online, and some put it under action horror, some put it on horror, some put it on suspense, and any movie can have so many genres and it can just be one film. And that's what I found out intriguing about films is because no matter if let's just say The Witch, it could be horror, but to some other genre it'd be something different. It could be folklore. And it doesn't even have to even put the word horror on it. So it's always very complex about how you identify what what film is going to be identified when you're describing it.
Yeah, that's actually so true. Vampire, it could be its own genre too, but it is a folk. I mean, we're talking about Nosferatu a lot this episode. I mean, the very first ever one of the first ever horror films, and I would even say the first ever folklore horror film is Nosferatu. Or actually, I have to say the full title: Nosferatu, a symphony of horror, which it was the first, I believe, the first ever vampire film. Originally, it was supposed to be Dracula, but there were so many I don't even know what's the word for it. There's like rights within the book were not given to F.W. Murnau, who directed the movie, so he had to like create his own way of his own version of Dracula, which is Count Orlok in the movie. But when that movie came out, so how Count Orlok, how you were describing I guess the vampires, whatever in that movie, that's technically how the lore describes them. And like German, I think it was German lore or something like that. But I think that's technically how they're supposed to be shown as, which is like very pale skin, weird pointy ears. You could see their fangs. Like you said, they're supposed to look like the mutant creatures from The Descent. But yeah, no, people thought Max Schreck, I believe, or Shrek, whatever. People thought the actor who played Max Schreck, who played Count, or like they thought he was an actual vampire. And the funny thing is that in the 2000, I believe, there was a movie called Shadow of the Vampire, which was about the making of Nosferatu, and they played on that theory of Max Schreck being a vampire. So Willem Dafoe plays Max Schreck, and in this movie he actually is a vampire. So it's kind of funny. Willem Dafoe actually is such a great actor, by the way. Just I know that has nothing to do with today's episode. I'm just saying it. Willem Dafoe is a great actor. Green Goblin, The Lighthouse, as we've mentioned, was that he's worked with Robert Eggers, and it's funny because he's gonna come out in the new Nosferatu movie. So he plays the film's version of Van Helsing. It took me a while to get it, but yeah, no, vampire is very common in folklore horror, or stuff like that. The recent Abigail, I haven't seen it yet. I know it's on Peacock. I've been trying to watch it, but I just been lazy to watch it. But I'm planning on watching it before the year ends because it looks like a good movie. And the thing is that vampire movies have been getting better recently. The only reason why they've been going downhill is because of one certain series, and I think you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh, Twilight.
Twilight.
Yeah, I always, right. I have a confession. I always like the Twilight movies, and that one song that says, it's that one that goes, "I have walked thousand waiting for that
Yeah,
a
yeah.
thousand years." I always liked the franchise, but I never got into the books.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus, you were gonna say something?
No, I was just agreeing with him.
Yeah, but yeah, no, vampires is a good folk. But I think after the Twilight films, that's when they actually started getting back into the horror. The only movies was in that, I guess, subgenre that hasn't really been like well received are werewolf films, and hopefully, I think Leigh Whannell, I believe, is having a Wolfman movie coming out next year, and I'm pretty excited about that one. Um,
Same.
But that type of folklore genre, as well as maybe even werewolf genre, if we're gonna put it that way, has had a tough time trying to bring back up. Wes Craven has been trying. So I'm gonna tell a little story, and then I guess we'll cut it off from here. So Wes Craven was trying to make a werewolf film, or he released a werewolf film called Cursed with Christina Ricci and Jesse Eisenberg. And that movie wasn't well received. Most of the actors disowned the movie, like Judy Greer, Christina Ricci, Jesse Eisenberg. They disowned the movie, and Wes Craven himself disowns it. The reason being is that it wasn't like if you watch it, you're gonna hate it. And the reason being why they disown it is it because of how it was filmed. It was because this movie was 90% shot. Like everything was going good. And then a certain producer who's in jail right now, actually prison. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. Okay, I really don't want to say his name just because it's my channel and like certain people I don't want to bring up. But I think you guys know who I'm talking about. He was kind of the main focus of the Me Too movement. But no, it wasn't him. It was his brother Bob. I can say Bob. His brother Bob Weinstein. Oh, there you go. I broke my own rule. Bob.
Wow. Well, good job, Gilbert.
Bob Weinstein cut in and was like, I don't like what you're doing. Make the movie all over again. And dude, like they had to reshoot it. I don't know how many times. And they just went with what they got, but it was a whole different story. Like, I think Jesse Eisenberg wasn't even considered in the first cut. Like, I think he was added on last minute. But this film, I believe, had the original cuts, I believe, had Skeet Ulrich from Scream, Heather, man, I can never pronounce her name. Nancy from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Heather Langet, whatever. You know who I'm talking about. I'm sorry, y'all, but you know who I'm talking about. Heather from A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think Tony Todd was also in the original cut. Who else? Robert Forster, I think, was also in the original cut. And then the werewolf design. So the werewolf design in Cursed was it was all CGI, and it's not even good CGI. The werewolf design that they originally went with was Rick Baker, who is an Oscar-winning makeup artist. He won the very first Oscar Best Makeup for his film American Werewolf in London. And if you haven't seen American Werewolf in London, dude, you are missing out. Yeah, no, he did the whole design, and I think there's even a clip of the werewolf design somewhere online. And then when Bob Weinstein intervened, he fired Rick Baker. And bro, I'm just saying, like, how I found this out was, again, Cody Leach. He talked about a director's cuts that are out there, and the reason why he brought it up was obviously because of the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. But he was talking about other, like, director's cut of films that were the problems of studio intervention. And when he brought up Cursed, I was surprised Cursed had so many cuts, because I've seen the original version. Obviously, it's dumb, or not the original version. I've seen the theatrical version that we were given. I saw, like, on Sci-Fi or USA or something like that. I almost say UTSA. I saw it on Sci-Fi or USA. Obviously, like, the CGI doesn't hold up. But when I found out that this wasn't even the version that Wes Craven created, I was there like, what? Like, bro, I mean, because I love Wes Craven. Unfortunately, we all know he's no longer with us. He gave us, of course, Freddy Krueger and the Ghostface Killer Scream. He's done a lot of good horror films. But I would have loved to see that version of the film. Yeah, I mean, like, maybe one day, because somebody out there has those footages. All he has to do is just put them together, and maybe like just put in, like, some of the scenes from the theatrical cut that can maybe make sense for the new cut, for the director's cut. Oh man, I think but I really hope maybe Lewa now will do something with the werewolf genre, because it hasn't really been that popular, or like hasn't made much of a comeback. I think that's it. I know we kind of went off topic, but those are some of the folklore horror films that we liked, we love. But thank you guys for being part of today's episode. Josh, great to have you on the podcast for the first time. Yeah, hopefully we can continue. We could try to continue on from here. Jesus, always, you're pretty much my co-host at this point. You've been on, like, so many episodes lately. Maybe you'll need a vacation one of these days. Thank you. You guys have a good night. I always mess. I don't know, for some reason I messed this up right now. You guys have a good morning, night, day, whenever y'all are listening to this. Can't wait for the next episode. I guess Jesus, if you want to take over for next time we do the episode.
Sure. I mean, whenever that's gonna be.
Yeah. I guess you could tell them again what we'll probably be talking about.
Sure. So, our next week, if I hadn't mentioned it already, it will be political horror.
Perfect for this time of the year, or this year really, given what we're going into. Because remember, this is an election year, and oh boy, yeah, I'm not excited for that one. But the political horror, I already got a couple in mind that I'm gonna check out. Mainly like Jordan Peele stuff. I think Jordan Peele does really good political horror films. He's only done 3 though, but yeah. Thank you guys so much. Y'all guys have a wonderful day, and tune in next time.